for today's discussion, FinTech sales and social selling. A bit of a curveball, FinTech sales and social selling. I'm Dean Seddon, and I'm going to be kind of referee, host, chip-inner. But I'm really pleased to have Derren Powell from Mastercard, Business Development Director for Mastercard, particularly FinTech EMI. And he's here with me today. Hello, Derren.
Hey, Dean. How are you?
I'm good, and I'm hopefully going to be good for the rest of this discussion, I think. I've also got Simon Miles, MD of MAVERRIK in London. And Simon, no, I did not forget your surname then, but it looked like it.
Nearly.
And if you're watching us across LinkedIn Live, YouTube, Facebook, all of the different channels where we're live now, stay tuned in, because if you're involved in any kind of FinTech, there'll be options to put questions in the chat. So wherever you're watching, there's a chat feature. You can join in and ask questions, and even add to the discussion, and we'll pick up on that. So just as we get started, Derren, you're obviously talking to FinTechs all the time. What do you see as some of the big challenges for FinTechs, particularly around the sales function?
So I think there's a number, right? I mean, number one, the space, the vertical is fascinating. The pace is quick. People pivot fast. And, you know, the overarching point of consideration for me is differentiation. You know, there is a lot of people, some extremely well scaled, well established. We all know who some of those are, and we may know less about who's on the runway, who's incubating, who's hopefully going to be the next unicorn or the next big thing. But I certainly think from a marketing perspective, one of those biggest challenges is budget, consideration. How does that get deployed? The burn rate is typically very high, and it's very rapid in terms of bringing that proposition to market, getting that proposition known. So there's a couple of things high level there, just to maybe start the conversation, if you like.
Mm-hmm. And Simon, you've been involved in a lot of startups. Yeah, you've been involved in some weird and wonderful startups in the finance sector as well. What do you see, sales perspective? Where do you see the challenges are, particularly on a B2B front?
Yeah, I mean, yes, startups in the FinTech. I think, I was involved in a startup that I was with for 5 years, right from angel inception. So my first chunk of money from my first angel investor. And I think my perception of what they wanted to see changed over the period of time. And I think if startups are anything like I was, you kind of get into this thinking you get your first chunk of money, and you think it's about spending that investment money carefully, and you think that it's about putting in loads of effort. And I think kind of coming back around and seeing that through the process of investment, I think the effort is a given. No investor is interested in how much effort you're putting in. Of course you're going to put loads of effort. I think it was about spending that money effectively, not carefully, effectively. And the two things that went hand in hand were obviously getting the product right so that the customer wanted it, they knew what it would do, and they knew how it would help them and what problem it might solve or what benefit it would bring. And the second thing was getting it in the customer's hands. And I think that's the key part. And as Derren said, if you don't have a huge marketing budget because you're in your first stage, or you might be in your second, third stage, but you've got a B2B product, how do we get that product into the customer's hand, getting it used, and ultimately making revenue? Because that's then what the investor wants to know. They want to know how quickly, where's the runway, how quickly we're running out of money, and how quickly you're getting to revenue, and does this product work?
And so, Derren, when they're building on that, and Simon's alluded to it here, you must have, I know, obviously, all the work you do with clients is top secret, but you will have seen some of the sales strategies they will have employed and things like that. How do you see them using social media? Have you seen many FinTechs push on social media?
I think it's a super interesting and fascinating question. And I think personally, it's still one of the things that perhaps is most underused and probably most misunderstood in terms of the power and the value that social selling and social channels can ultimately deliver to entities, whether that's at a corporate level or in the space that I'm clearly most energized about and enthused about, the fintech sector. So I think there is for me quite a significant education piece to be done, and of course, would love to talk in a little while about perhaps some of the things that we've been doing together and how Maverick has helped me, has helped Mastercard really challenge some of the more traditional thinking, perhaps in terms of LinkedIn as just a pure sort of lead gen tool. Perhaps there's so much more to it, but also some of the things that and some of the insights that you've got under your hood that have been able to benefit me, Mastercard. I'd love to maybe take a little dive into that in a second and maybe use a bit of a case study. But answer to your question, I don't actually think there's that many truly that embrace social as a channel to sell and to sell consistently. Maybe that's the key piece there, is that consistency of sale. I think there's a lot that are leveraging, I'm going to focus very much when I talk about social, say very much on LinkedIn. I think, as the business channel, as the channel of engagement, it's a very quick and immediate, if not immediate, route to market. So I think we are seeing the fintechs that we talked about it earlier on, their pace at which they work, the ability to pivot unbelievably quickly, the ability to change their route map in hours, not weeks or months, as some of the perhaps the what I would perhaps class as a tier one or an established or a traditional bank may be. I think it's just it genuinely is a space that we're going to see more and more of. That said, we're seeing more and more that whether they're wallets, enablers, neobanks, bank challengers, challenger banks, I mean, the list goes on. I think that ecosystem is getting ever deeper, ever richer, ever broader. And as a result of that, I think there's a tremendous opportunity. But I do think there's a huge disconnect between what the art of the possible is from a social media leverage or usage as a sales channel viewpoint.
So Simon, you're the veteran diehard cold caller. You've been involved in the finance related startups. What do you see about social media, and what's the fit for a fintech? What are the areas that they should be using it for?
Well, I think it's really, it's such an interesting kind of place, because I think the first thing that you think of when you use the word social is you think of social media, and then you think of paid digital. And so you automatically go to, well, I need a huge budget. I'm not going to have the budget of Mastercard. And that was the thing that completely took me by surprise, particularly when we started working on LinkedIn together. When I was a client, and I was convinced that in 2021, there had to be a better way of getting my message to my end user in such a way that created curiosity around the problem that they had, as opposed to what you normally see. And we're talking about LinkedIn today. What you normally see on LinkedIn, and I use this all the time, is this me. Here I am, this is what we do, this is the award we've won, this is what charitable work we're doing, and that's fantastic. But as a client who wants to buy and perhaps needs what you've got, yes, that goes some way to credibility, but that doesn't solve my problem. And so 750 million people on a platform, if I couldn't get 50 clients from this platform, the law of probability had been written wrong. And so I was convinced that there had to be a better way, and that had to be organic, because I didn't have huge budget. And most importantly for me, it couldn't be automated. I am sick and tired of the automated messages I get on a daily basis. You can see that they've been sent by some clever bot or whatever's working for them, and I'm getting lots of those, and I don't want that. This is about building relationships. So when we started exploring how to make LinkedIn work, the two factors were organic, they were relationship led, that didn't require a huge budget, and most importantly, was not automation, and it needed to be organic, relationship driven. And I think if you can get that right in 2021 and going forward, never has there been a more important time to execute, because the world, particularly post-pandemic, when there's not been as much human one-to-one, face-to-face. It's about, how do I use these channels to create curiosity, to build a relationship that ends in a client relationship that benefits both of us. And that's obviously what we're going to touch on today. How do we do that? How have we worked with Derren and him to do that? And as Derren said, this is not something that takes months, weeks, months, years. We've been able to do things in hours, organically, properly, without tricks of the trade that I personally, can't work with.
So we'll ask Derren about his experience of this in a minute, but one of the things that I think is really interesting is when, particularly on a B2C fintech, a lot of people discredit LinkedIn because it's the business one. But actually, if you think about it a bit differently, LinkedIn is the high disposable income social channel, because everybody on there is putting their professional foot forward. And so some businesses may go B2C, we're better with Facebook and we're better with Facebook ads. But actually LinkedIn's incredible from an education piece. And a lot of these, I'm going to come back to Derren in a minute. A lot of, particularly with fintech, if you've got a new idea or a revolution on a way of doing things, in other words, well, it could be outside of fintech, but if you're trying to get somebody to change their way of doing things, even if it's a better way of doing things, you have to educate them, don't you? And so absolutely. I see often, and Simon, I know you're on with it, and Derren, we're all on the same page here, that actually a lot of LinkedIn content, particularly if you're a fintech trying to get buy-in, whether that's investment, whether that's partnership, whether that's customer base, it's about educating people and building that visibility that adds trust and all that. What do you think the place of that is in terms of LinkedIn, Derren, in terms of the education piece, and then maybe touch on some of the things that's happened with your LinkedIn?
Sure. So I think at the heart of everything surely is understanding, education, whichever words you want to use. But I think before you can get to that point of being able to be educated or willing to be educated, I think you've also got to lay yourself open to be vulnerable and to actually push yourself into spaces that maybe they're terribly well known. They're certainly not, where you've not trodden before. And let's be honest, I mean, isn't that what, in the fintech space, it's all about sort of challenge, disruption, the ability to perhaps unsettle, to maybe offer to do things in a different way than what's done before. So, when you think about it logically, there should be some perfect synergy with the space that we're talking about, i.e. social selling and the space of fintech. But clearly it's applicable to the wider verticals as well. It certainly doesn't have to be and should never be restricted just to fintech. I think, there's a huge part once one is educated, you can start to get into actually thinking about, well, what does content look like, and what are some of the what's some of the secret sauce that it's common sense, and when you talk it through, it makes perfect sense. We've worked together now for some time, and it's been every day. Genuinely, it sounds cliche, but there's always something new taken from simple things like, don't use any more than 3 hashtags. I mean, you'd think, I remember my initial ones, it was a little post, maybe a couple of lines. You never clicked on that more button. Maybe there was a picture, maybe there wasn't. I'd have about 25 hashtags. It'll take me ages to work through those hashtags, but again, it's when it's understood, and it's like, well, actually go to the more broader topics. Don't just talk to the community that you're already engaged with, because you've got that engagement there already. Now, of course, you want to keep that fresh and you want to keep that engaged and energized, but you want to be pushing into these different verticals. And I think if you're going to do that, again, you've got to lay yourself out there. And certainly for some of these fintechs and some of these, well-established businesses, I think the question to ask is, and clearly there's a lot of evolution going on in this space, but how comfortable are organizations, how comfortable is business in general in laying itself bare and being actually quite quite honest in that sort of a social channel. I mean, we all know, everyone, you know, whether it's a skyline, whether it's a picture of one's dog or family, or maybe it's some charity. I mean, that gets engagement and interaction. And a lot of people say to me, yeah, but that's not on a business level. Well, it works for me on a business level as well as an individual level. Why not? I hope that's answered your question, Dean, and maybe given a bit of a twist on some of the other things as well. If it hasn't, let me know and I'll clarify.
But I think you're onto something there, of the mix of, often it's not about what we want. Being understood is sometimes what we can do is we can go to social media and go, what do I want to say? And it becomes more about what I want to say, not what's understood. And so you could have a very complex message that you're trying to land that actually misses the mark because you forget you've got to land a message in seconds. And it's not about, oh, I'm going to give you a big chunky piece of content that's really detailed. It's actually about landing something quickly and simply. And I look on LinkedIn, and so much work is put into content, but because it's from a broadcast mentality, not what are we getting people to understand in the market, I think we miss it. Simon, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, you know, Derren touched on the key word, it's education, and also it's a re-education. You know, I was that person, I'd been burned by there was lots and lots of people out there on LinkedIn who tell me they would get me 1,000 connection requests a month, and then 200 of those would want to, you know, talk to me, and then 5 of those would want to meet with me. And I went through 5 or 6 of these agencies, and when I looked at it, it wasn't honest. It wasn't honest. And when we had the first conversation, Dean, and you know, and I came to the call, and I was kind of like, if you're going to tell me about how you can, you know, write a message better than someone else, then please let's just stop this now. And you just invited me to hold that thought and educated myself and the other directors of that company about how it's this content driven. So the content needs to talk to the audience. And like you say, you know, how much content on LinkedIn is about me? And like Derren said, it's, you know, I'm engaging with my own community, telling my own community all the things they already know, or I'm engaging with my competitors because I'm engaging in that same community. I'm not thinking about the community of my prospect, of my clients. That's where I need to put my content. And when you showed us how to do that and create content that created curiosity, so that it was front and center in my prospects feed, and then to start creating a relationship, you know, like I use that example all the time. You don't go into a networking event and walk up to the first person you see at the bar and go, can I just tell you about myself? Because I've got the best product in the world and you really need to use it. You don't do that. You go up and you engage and you ask them a bit about themselves and why they're here. And naturally the conversation progresses into what they do and what you do. And if there's not a synergy there, when you've made a contact and you work your way around the room, and then you get to someone and there's a synergy. They go, oh, you've got a widget that saves accountants time. Well, I'm an accountant. So then that conversation develops into business. And that is what LinkedIn needs to be used for. It can't be used as this, well, we're all here, we all want to do business, so we all should talk to each other. And I think the key is the re-education of that. And you know, and then when you plug in and you know how to line up all correctly, how LinkedIn gets you noticed, how LinkedIn works for you if you're engaging in the right content, if you're creating the right content. You know, I'm sure you're going to get onto some of the stats, but you know, my views organically of my posts are in the 50,000 plus mark, and that's not pretend like Twitter bots, and that's not likes like it is on Instagram. That is people who are seeing my view, seeing my information. And you know, I was a client, and now I work with MAVERRIK. It blew me away, and so much so I said to Dean, I've got to get involved in this. This is, and then you know, and that's how I rang people up like Derren, who I knew, and I said, listen, you like LinkedIn, I can see that you're active. Have a look at this. And Derren, I'm right, you know, I'm right in saying, when I said have a look at this, and you had a look at it, you were like, oh,
100%. I mean, I thought, and this is where for me is a bit of a recalibration as well, right? I mean, I was very focused. I thought I was doing it right, or at least I thought I was doing it pretty well. And it's quite humbling when you're like, yeah, it's okay. Actually, you were being very polite. It was, I wasn't doing it well at all. You know, I put myself out there. There was lots of posts being shared. I was sharing multiple posts a day. It was really uncomfortable. Someone suddenly telling me 3 hashtags, 1 post a day max. I was like, "Whoa, this is different. What does this mean? Surely more is more is better." So for me, it was a bit of a level set as well. You know, I was very much outcome focused, and when you think about it, I was missing so many steps. Now that's clear to me now. I get that, but I was looking at, what do I want? I wasn't necessarily thinking of my audience. I wasn't necessarily thinking of who do I want to know that I don't know. I'd not been thinking. I thought I was very much client centric or new relationship centric. One could argue I wasn't. And when we started working through that, you know, if you like, which I'm sure you'll talk about far better than I could later on, but your genuine, very real digital sales strategy, you know, those 5 points that you walked me through, starting with positioning, ending with results, and that bit in the middle, along with those 2 areas that I've just started, the top and tail, the position and the results, is fascinating. And it's so unbelievably powerful. And to the point that you made earlier, Simon, things can change so quickly as well. You know, clearly there's a lot of technology that sits behind channels like LinkedIn. There's a huge amount of natural traction that gets driven when organically you're building at such a pace. And for me, it genuinely blew my mind how quickly I was starting to connect with, and this is before we haven't done anything specifically on, if you like, outbound targeting yet. We're building a base. We're getting those foundations right, which I love, and we're taking the time to get that right. But we've not even scratched the surface really of what the secret chest of gems and jewels that can genuinely be unlocked, and I'm fascinated to see what that could look like.
Well, Dean, you know, you need to deliver one of the money shots, because I think there's a stat, isn't there, around Derren and Mastercard from.
I'll be careful in how I deliver the stat, because there are obviously Derren, I don't want to get you in trouble here, so I'm being really careful. There are occasions, and not every day, because Mastercard's got what, 2 million, 3 million followers or something, where you have gone above theirs in terms of engagement and reach and visibility. And that's not saying, oh, everybody's doing it wrong and Darren's doing it right. What it's saying is, when you find a message that resonates with an audience, LinkedIn and any social channel loves that, because if you extend, and this is one of the important points that I'm gonna not do too much today, if you can extend the stay of a browser on LinkedIn with your content, you actually play to the way social media was designed to work. In other words, if you get the attention of people, you get the attention of more people. That's what it's all about. It rises and falls exactly like a market, you know, that if you hold attention, you win. And what I see, and what we've done, Derren, is your posts and your content, all we've done is optimize them for attention. Yep. Really. We haven't got into the outbound and building new relationships or any of that bits yet, but all we've done is optimize for attention. And you've gone from, I don't know, get myself in trouble with Derren here, but you've
don't be too hard on me.
You know, that you're getting in the, I don't know, 20,000, 30,000 views average per week, something like that. I'd have to check the stats, but it's not far off that.
No, agreed.
And all the other thing that we talk about then is priming, Simon. And priming really is about Derren's doing part of the priming bit in terms of he's educating an audience. He's building that message out there. His name's getting out there. And then the next phase of that is actually to really go and cultivate those relationships. And I don't mean copy and paste pitches, because everybody's doing that stuff.
And I think it's now, it's kind of, okay, so if I'm sitting watching this and I'm thinking, well, I've got a sales team, or I'm a starter and I've got an amount of money, and I was thinking about doing paid digital, and you know, it's valuable. Or I've got a sales team and I'm a CEO and I don't have time to do business development, or I've got a sales team of 20 people and they're not performing, and I want to upscale and I want to go after some of these big accounts. How does and how do we, what difference is it going to make to me? And as you said, the priming. So that's the first part we focused on with Derren. And I'm right in saying, Derren, I think you've had some inbound as well. You've had people seeing your feed who've come to you and said, tell me a little bit more about, the schemes at Mastercard.
Yep.
So you're priming accounts. So now what you're doing is you're creating reach. And what was I found so fascinating is once that account is primed, you then look at who do I want to talk to? And I was using the nice analogy. I'm an accountancy firm. Sorry, I'm a developer. I've made a lovely little financial widget that plugs into Xero, and it makes accountancy firms' life, it saves them 10 times as much time as they normally do at the end of the month. So I want to talk to all the accountancy firms in the country, but actually there's a sweet spot. So I'm going to filter that down. How do I now reach those individuals without jumping on that and going, can I just tell you about my fantastic widget? Because again, you're going back in time now. You're going back to where we were before, where it was about me. And I think if you get an account primed, so you get the visibility, you get the reach, and then you start building the relationship, much as I did with the example with the networking event. It's what pain points have you got? What challenges do you have? That's an interesting, an interesting concept. Tell me more about it. It makes perfect sense when you say it like that, right? Everyone that I talk to say it makes perfect sense. Absolutely. Are you doing it? No, I don't have the time. Is your sales team doing it? No, they don't have the time. And the key to this that you taught us very early on, Dean, was LinkedIn. That's our focus today for social channel. Relies on consistency. If you drop off and you fall behind, you lose your priming, and your relationship building relies on 3 to 4 touch points with a prospect. And so it needs to be done every day at the same time, effectively sometimes, but it needs to be consistent. And I think that's the other bit. We've all done it. We touch it a little bit, we come off it. We get a meeting, we go traveling, something happens in the office, suddenly it's Friday and I've done nothing on LinkedIn. So how do I focus that? And then if you can get that right, it becomes an incredibly powerful channel. So your sales development, you've got, we do some cold calling. We understand our market, we cold call in, brilliant. We do some networking. Of course you do, that's fantastic. I work my own network for referrals, that's fantastic. What was the missing link? Well, my social, it's so powerful in 2021. It's missing. So it's not about saying it's a replacement. It's about saying, like you say, if you've got 100 people and you're going to cold call 100 people, you might get 5 responses and you might get 3 meetings, and you might get 1 client. And that might be a good statistic in your organization. But you've missed 95% of those people. For whatever reason, bad day, wrong time, bad mood, can't buy right now. And they've gone, they've heard about you, they've unsubscribed from your email campaign. But by creating a social relationship, no bridge is ever burned. And so it's a constant cycle of prospecting. And that was what fascinated me about it. And as you say, as an old dog who was in the 90s, chairs are for bears and telephone terrorists, I was like, this is where it's at. This is where we've got to go with this. It's got to be the other channel. It's the missing link in B2B business development.
I think just to add on something you've said there as well is, and I really struggled to understand this at the time, and I'm going back maybe 3 months now, maybe more. But when you do it right, to your point, Simon, consistently, you actually get a lot of time back because you're deploying that time in a manner that's far more efficient and far more effective in terms of where you're deploying that resource. So for me, now focusing on, a very clear, unique, interesting, content rich, because I'm still very much in that phase where I'm trying to, in order to create some curiosity, building and sharing some thought leadership content, whatever it may be. Actually, I've now got a significant amount of time back in my day because I'm laser focused. I've got complete structure to what that piece looks like. I think, again, that is also another critical pillar stone or cornerstone of building that foundation out for future success. Because,
and I think you're actually in a slightly different position, Derren, as well, because you are somewhat a thought leader in your industry sector. You know, you're very well known, you know, very well respected. You work for an incredibly, you know, a blue chip brand, and you're kind of the top of that tree of people, where people are in the kind of pecking order of card issuance, etc. So we're looking for a different market. We're looking to do different things with you. And I think it's very much about becoming a thought leader and developing that from content perspective. But if I'm a founder or a startup or an early stage, you know, I'm down in the dirt, right? And I'm down there, and I've got an investor meeting in a month's time. Are they going to release me the next chunk, 100 grand? I haven't hit the target. The product's great. I'm trying really hard. I'm working all hours, God send. Investor doesn't care less, right? I got to deliver. And I was in that place. And if I had my time again, you know, I went down the BD. I went down the traditional business development route. I had a prepaid card, business expense card, and I went down that route. I wanted to talk to businesses about their business expenses. That's one channel. If I'd have perhaps known this at that point, you know, I could deliver relationships, much higher level partnerships. And so what I'm saying is, we're taking time with your account because of the nature of what we want to achieve. But at the same time, if I'm down in the dirt and I've got to get results, this can happen in days. This is not something that has to kind of take 2 months. We can look at the prospect list, deliver the content, start engaging with the prospects, open up the conversation, and start seeing results incredibly quickly.
Well, I think to that point, you've also got to think about, you know, clearly, as you've mentioned, as a technology company, as a multi-rails, you know, sort of business entity, you know, there's naturally a lot of footfall anyway, right? So people will be saying, but Mastercard will always get, you know, we'll always get a nice generation of leads and steady flow and all the rest of it. Well, that actually creates some other considerations. I won't say problems, but considerations, because you've got to work through that, right? You've got to find the things that you really want to engage with right now in terms of prioritization. I think the other way of ultimately looking at it is as a fintech, who, in using your example, Simon, you've got some very different pressures. You've got to deliver today. You know, you can maybe be with social, you can be maybe a little bit. You can maybe invoke a little more thought. You can maybe be a little bit more creative and sort of, you know, push those boundaries a little firmer, because, well, I can make mistakes at the minute. You know, I can just see where my push points are and how far I can push, and etc. etc. I think there's always two sides of every coin, right? And I think that these are interesting things to think about, because as we've seen, and there's been some interesting examples out there already, where people are trying those and just seeing what sort of language can we use, what sort of creative can we use, what sort of content do I want people to know about my organization today without delay. And, you know, either which way, it's an interesting journey for some to go on. So I think that was just for me at least, it's an interesting perspective to think about whether you're blue chip or whether you're unicorn, aspiring unicorn, or idea. There's many ways to look at how social can not only complement what you do, but actually also be a key driver.
And one big thing that is, I mean, I want to take a year out and actually study this, but I'm never going to get the time to do it, is the way social media somehow is almost like a short-term memory thing. So for an example, and I've seen this so many times, if we didn't know each other, Derren, and I had a conversation with you on a LinkedIn message or on a comment, you know, 7 days later, you don't even remember me. We just forget stuff so quickly. Who was that person? And from a sales point of view, not having a structure like that is, you could have somebody red hot warm today that you just miss because there's no structure, and 7 days later the opportunity's gone, just because social media is just sat in our heads all the time. It never sinks past that a lot of the time, unless you're really not driving home the message in a sense of, you know, banging a drum, but actually making sure that a message lands consistently.
Agreed. So coming back to that point of consistency, and we're talking a lot about it, you know, for me, one of the frightening things about under optimizing or not really seeing the value of some of these channels is, how do you know what you're walking past? What aren't we realizing on a daily basis from truly not engaging these channels in optimal ways? You know, you and I know if we're in a traditional, you know, and it's great news, you know, we're able to start to also network, and to what we're talking about, this is all complementary stuff in the physical world. Again, we know that if there's 10 people in that room, and you know how many you've spoken to, and therefore by default I've spoken to 6, I've had some questions, but I've missed 4. Well, it's probably, is it 10x, 20x that's walking past us in inverted commas on a LinkedIn channel? I don't know, but it's a scary number to quantify when I start to think about the impact that I've seen since working with MAVERRIK, when I'm starting to demonstrate, when I'm starting to see, and there's a clear tangible, this is my interactions on posts, not just views, actually reactions, comments, direct mails. It's staggering, genuinely staggering, the impact that has had.
And
I think, go on, Dean, sorry.
I was going to take that one step further and go, often on a sales front, people will turn around and say, you know what, I just want to find the people who are interested in our product. And so they justify the direct message of the same thing to go, I only want the people who are interested. So I have to find the needle in the haystack. I know 99% are not going to be interested. So I just go, do you need this? Do you need this? Do you need this? And somebody bites. But Derren's alluding to the point of, because you've adopted that strategy, how many people are going past you because they don't see the relevance?
Yep.
And you know what, as well, we are talking today about social selling. And there are 2 concepts here. There's social selling and digital marketing. Now, in 2021, the 2 have never been more intertwined. Sales and marketing, with the channels that we've got, with the media channels, have never been more intertwined, but they are still 2 very different things. And I see it time and time again. And we talk to huge PLCs right down to solopreneurs. And when I talk to a marketing department, I'm not very popular. And the reason being is because, like I said, I've years of sales experience. There are 2 clients in any business. There are the external clients who buy what you've got, and there are the internal clients, who are the people who you work for you, who work with you. They are your colleague, the internal marketing. And what I see time and time again is the marketing departments don't think they are, but actually a lot of the marketing is driven internally. So it's fantastic. We won this award. We put that on social media. That is phenomenal. New starters, current employees, it's incredible marketing. I feel fantastic. I work for a company that's winning awards. I've got a career. This is brilliant. But from a client-centric perspective, it adds to credibility, but it doesn't sell the product. And I think when you like you say, Dean, it come back to the point. This is not about replacement. I didn't see it as a replacement. You know, I had a sales team of phenomenal cold callers. I mean, cold callers was our main channel to market. Some phenomenal cold callers. But when some of them are turning around to me and saying at 11 o'clock in the morning, I've just spoken to somebody who's had 4 calls from companies doing what we do already this morning. It doesn't matter how good you are at cold calling. That person at the other end of the phone has had enough by 11 o'clock. So that channel's not working for everybody. And like you say, it's a needle in a haystack. I'm looking for Alan, 52 years old, or I'm looking for Jeanette, 44 years old, and she needs this and he needs this. And I'm going to look in this haystack and see if I can find them. And they might not be there for 10 days. And that's the issue. But when you get into social selling, and let's face it, everybody in an organization at startup level, FinTech is a salesperson, particularly the CEO, right? Everybody's a salesperson. So how can we make the presentation of this business appeal and sell on a social level? And then when you get into the mid-tier companies, it's a case of saying, well, we've got an effective sales team. We're doing relatively well here, but there's a piece missing here that marketing is internalizing, not on purpose, but they are. They just are. They're internalizing our message. It's adding credibility to our company. But at the same time, as a salesperson, like you say, I just want find people who want what I've got. So now if I use a social channel to distribute content that talks to the problem of my prospects. So I raise the curiosity. It means that the response rate that I get from the engagement of interacting with their content, I now know when that person sits down and has 30 minutes with me, I haven't sold them anything. But because of the way the content has delivered the message, because of the interaction I've had with them, I know when they come to the meeting, they have the problem I solve. And that's what every salesperson wants. I want to ring Alan or Jeanette and I want them to answer the phone and go, my goodness, thank goodness you rang, because I am suffering with exactly the problem you solve. They don't. And this way, we found more of them that did.
And I think, go on, Derren.
So I was just going to say, I think linked to that, we talk a lot about salespeople, right? I mean, if you're passionate about sales, you're passionate about sales. Obviously, everyone on this call really is. I think we also need to acknowledge, though, there's a huge amount of people out there who will say, sales isn't for me. But I'd argue we're all selling at every moment of every day. It's just in our own unique way, or whatever that may be. So for me, we also should acknowledge, not just the power of social or the value that Maverick can bring to that social successful sale. It's also about, actually, everyone can play a part in this. There's very little time or wider investment from that user perspective to make a difference and to make an impact. So fine, let's talk about the sellers, because that's ultimately, I suppose, that's in their job. It's what they do. But I'd also argue that we can also turn a wider worker population into an organization that is more sales centric in their behavior as well.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's a good point there. And, there's a brand we were talking to recently, and they focused on, actually, through all of their, corporate channels, they can only do so much without paid ads. That's the way social media works. They're not going to let, Mastercard or Maverick as a brand do anything for free. That defeats the point, right? But actually mobilizing your team and building a team out to say that I can add to the story of Mastercard or whoever, and say I can share my bit, and resourcing that, actually you can get a ton more in terms of reach, message, the works, than you can probably do hands down with just organic content on the company page, or even posting. And we did the calculation on yours, Derren. If you'd wanted to get the same level of views, it was something like you would have had to spend about $10,000 to get the same amount of visibility with paid ads. And that's the cheap end of the ads. Yeah. You're connected to a lot of people in the finance sector, which generally platforms prioritize as a more expensive kind of person to reach. So mobilizing a team of people, even if they're just there to go, I'm going to share my bit, and resourcing it. And when I mean resourcing it, I mean, don't just give them the corporate material and say, share it. Train them and support them in saying, how can they give their bit of that story as well?
That's so valuable. Absolutely. I mean, you absolutely, hit the nail on the head there, Derren. You can mobilize the entire company into becoming sales centric. I mean, the other one, Dean and I, we talked about it the other day. We both got the same email. A large, incredibly well-funded organization in the UK, and they're doing email sequencing. Now, I don't know if you've had them. We've all had them. The first email comes in, all very nice, and then, because I haven't gone back, I get another one 2 days later saying, you must have missed this. No, I didn't miss it. You're not addressing something that addresses my pain point. You're just telling me about you. And when I train sales teams, as we all know, it's about finding the need. Now, if I'm on a call with you or I'm in a meeting with you, tell me about the challenges you currently have in your role. Tell me about how you manage those challenges. What do you put in place to ensure that you make your process as efficient as possible? Ultimately, what do you need? Because I've got a toolbox here, and I'm going to get the right tool out. I'm not going to take a hammer to take apart a table. I'm going to take a spanner. And what people do is they take the toolbox, they put it into an email, and they throw it out there. Yeah. And maybe they get 4 back. I don't know. But by the time I get the 3rd email, sort of suggesting I'm probably really busy, but if they could just have 1 more second of my time, I kind of want to go back and say, I wasn't busy, I just wasn't interested.
There's 2 things I want to add there, Simon.
Organisations are still doing that in 2021.
There's a couple of things, and we'll try and wrap up, and I'll come back to you both for a wrap up here, and then we'll wrap up. One of the things you said there about the kind of template generic email sequence is ultimately when you come down to the sales, you'll have a close rate. Yeah, if I have this many meetings, I'll get this many proposals, and I'll get this much sales. And what seems to happen is we accept that to get more meetings, to get more proposals, to get more sales, when we scale the kind of I want more meetings, we accept that that means big volumes. And there's 2 ways to scale. There's the scaling in terms of improving the number of meetings from outreach, or there's improving the volume of outreach. I don't know whether I'm getting this across very well, but it's like, we know industry stat, if you send 1,000 emails, outreach emails, and then you follow it up with a sequence, the end result is about a close rate from all of those 1,000 of 0.4%. So you go 1,000 to 4 sales, roughly, in terms of emails. So wouldn't it make sense to go, well, hang on a minute, if we know if we can get in front of the right people, we just create a strategy to get in front of more of the right people. Not let's just ping a load of people to increase the volume. And I've seen this, and I've proven this with a couple of companies, that actually it's roughly, if you do the right, what we call priming, about 20 emails will get you the same result, or 20 outreaches on LinkedIn, but it has to be done in a particular way. Rather than quantity, quality, and then you improve the close rate. Simon, Derren?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, this is about optimization. This is about creating relationship and outreach, and how to do that. And for me, I didn't understand how to do it. Desperate to learn, desperate to be educated, because I wanted, let's face it, if I've got a team of salespeople and by 10 o'clock, the prospect's telling them I've had 5 calls about this today, is my salesperson motivated or demotivated? They're kind of thinking about their career at that point, right? So I as a sales director, it's my responsibility. My job as a sales director is to find the most optimal way to get our product in the client's hands. That's my role. It's not to kind of just keep hiring and trying the same old thing. The old adage, if you keep doing the same thing, you get the same results. What's the definition? And that's for me what it was about. And I just could not believe the results that we achieved. It was just astonishing. 40% of people were coming back and engaging in meetings. 40%. We had a 65% connection acceptance rate versus, I think the top end of blind connection requests is 15% on LinkedIn. We had a 65% and we had a 40% meeting engagement rate, which meant that everyone I sat and talked to knew what I did, wanted what I had, because they had the problem that I proposed. That is the holy grail for a salesperson. They are the Glengarry leads.
I think the other bit to add to that as well, right, is a lot of this happens very naturally if you're passionate about your subject. No one's forcing anything here in terms of content that's being shared or thought leadership and ideas that are being sort of pushed out across a wider sort of audience. If you've got that passion and you've got that purpose that underpins that passion, and there's complete clarity in what you're doing and the reasons for it, it's actually a very natural or an organic growth that one sees. I think that's, we don't talk about that enough for me. And I think whilst it might be pointing out the obvious, it's extremely powerful for me.
Awesome. Well, we're going to wrap up. Derren, thank you for coming on. the future's bright in fintech by the sounds of it. And you're in London today, back in the office, right?
Sure am. Yep. Good to be back.
And how's London? Is it busy?
Buzzing. Absolutely buzzing, heaving, and you know, the vibe is back. Hopefully for the long term as well, right?
Yeah, awesome. Simon, any last word? Well, not any last words. You're not dying or anything, but any last words before we wrap up?
I can see someone on Facebook's quoted me. They obviously know me, so they've put down that I was a client and now I work with MAVERRIK. Yeah, I was a client and now I work with MAVERRIK. And if that isn't a greater testament to understanding where, like I said, I was an old dog who could not be taught a new trick. And I was ready to be taught a new trick. So if anyone on the call wants to find out a little bit more about me, you can find me on LinkedIn, or you can DM us on the channel here, but find us on LinkedIn and drop me a message and we can have a call and I can put a little bit more proof behind the pudding, because it's been a phenomenal journey and incredibly interesting. And we're now MAVERRIK London, aren't we, Dean? And we are we're doing really well. So it's you know, it's really exciting.
So just again, thank you for joining us. And if you want any, you know, if you want to pick Simon's brain and have a look at what this whole social selling thing is and how it fits, drop him a line on LinkedIn. We'll circulate a replay of this session to you by email. But thanks again for watching, and we'll see them all on LinkedIn, right?
Yeah, connect with us and have a look.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Thanks, Derren.
Thanks all. Thanks, Dean. Thanks, Simon. Bye.